Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Donahue?
Here.
McKnight?
Here.
Roa?
Here.
Vogel? Here. Stearns?
Here. If you're able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If you have a cell phone, iPhone, iWatch, iPad, I think that's about all the eyes I have. If you want to go ahead and turn them off, I will remind you at the end of the meeting, or try to remind you at the end of the meeting to turn them back on. Larry, could you grab me a pen off of my nameplate back there? Sure. Thank you. Meeting notices, Katie.
January 15th, 2020, executive session was held to discuss real estate and to consult with legal counsel. On February 5th, 2020, executive session was held to discuss real estate.
Okay. Motions to approve the minutes, please. Or minutes, please.
So moved.
Second. Second. Roll call.
Donahue?
Aye.
McKnight?
Aye.
Roa?
Aye.
Vogel? Aye. Stearns?
Aye. Jim, you did ask for some corrections in the minutes. Was that taken care of?
Yeah.
Andy?
Yep.
Okay. Just want to make sure. I just want to welcome everybody. We don't usually have this big of a group here. A lot of friends and some new friends. So, welcome. And Andy, do we have anyone signed up to speak?
There are 4 individuals, Your Honor. Well, 2, it appears. Kirsten Ames is first, and then David Miller, looks like.
Okay. And that is on the agenda. So I'll ask Christian if you'd like to come up, and if you would give us your address, we'd appreciate that, please.
I'm at 626 Walnut Street. I'm here on behalf of a number of Meadville residents to speak to the policy proposal that we wrote for appointments for city authorities, boards, and commissions, and to ask you to consider adopting the policy. Before I say more, I wanted to ask those in support of the policy to just stand for a minute, just so we can see who's here for this. Thank you. As you may know, I served on the Shade Tree Commission from 2014 to 2019, and I've served on the Market Authority since 2017. Through these 2 positions, I've seen how valuable it is to have engaged residents who have different perspectives and networks on our city boards. I've also observed and experienced a wide range of how easy or difficult it is for someone to get on a board in Meadville. The lack of an appointment process limits our community's potential, and we need a system and a policy in place for appointing new members. And I can add here that I moved to Meadville when I was 24, and I don't think I would have gotten involved in city boards for a long time if a colleague hadn't encouraged me, told me what to do, and vouched for me to get on the Shade Tree Commission. For these reasons, I was very excited when a group of residents started working on a policy proposal to make this process clear and easy for everyone to navigate. Since this past fall, we have looked at other cities' policies on authorities and adapted those ideas to what we think would work best in Meadville. The draft you have today is the result of the input of many residents, and I think also some city staff. You should have received a cover letter with our policy, and I want to reiterate a few items to explain specifically why we think this policy is so important. The goals of our policy are to standardize both the application and the appointment process. We think this will make the process easier for new volunteers to understand and navigate, also reduce the barriers to entry for new volunteers, and we think this will encourage new folks to apply and get involved. We also think this policy will clarify and delegate tasks for city staff, and it will also clarify and standardize the role of existing authority, board, and commission members in the appointment process. Again, I can say that this would have been really helpful in my experience on the 2 boards that I've served on. The policy will also place most appointments in 1 or 2 annual cycles, and we think the public would get used to knowing when there are openings, and it would streamline the process for publicizing and processing applications. We appreciate that you discussed our original draft policy at a prior city council meeting, and we took the feedback that you had and made the following changes to that original draft. Overall, we simplified the policy. This included removing operating standards for the individual authorities, which are often found in their bylaws. We also removed the requirement to advertise in the Meadville Tribune to reduce costs, and we removed reliance on outside entities like My Meadville and Meadville Calendar. So we believe this standardized, transparent policy would help our authorities, boards, and commissions to become more effective in serving our city. We're asking you to consider this policy for our community and to take the next steps necessary to adopt it. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Dave? If you'd also give us your address, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I didn't prepare anything. I wasn't sure exactly what was going to ensue here, but yeah, I agree very much with Kirsten's proposal and the kind of work that's been done to standardize this process. And I'm speaking really from the experience of having served way back on the beautification committee for about 10 years, and then on the Streetscape committee. And I found out about the beautification committee simply through a friend who was on it, and said, "Why don't you join us?" In that informal way. And the next thing I knew, I was signed up basically for something that went on and had its ups and downs. At times, we felt totally ineffective. At other times, we actually did things that I think were useful and have left their mark in certain ways on the look of the city. But it was kind of arbitrary. And we as a body changed over time, and I think that had something to do with whether we were effective or not. But the Streetscape Committee was something that I was invited to be on, and I said, well, when you meet, and it was at a certain time when I was teaching classes and couldn't be on it, but that didn't seem to matter. They just wanted a name, I guess, to put on the roster. And so I felt totally ineffective, and I think I made 1 or 2 meetings out of a whole slew of meetings. That the meetings were somewhat ad hoc as well. But I think, trying to standardize this process is also a form of democratizing it. I think we've seen again and again that often people sit back who could really be very invaluable to their communities and feel very rewarded by the work they're doing if they were simply invited. But there's often a kind of psychological wall that stands in their way. And when we allow it to simply become haphazard or a matter of even worse of cronyism, I think you're really losing that opportunity to open up the gates of a democratic kind of engagement that many people really yearn for, but often don't know quite how to enter in, how to find the opportunity. So I'm very much for that, and I do think when we on the beautification committee found ourselves with a number of people with some real expertise, and again it was a little bit haphazard that it just fell out that way. We felt very effective and very empowered to make some difference in our community. So I would think from that experience I very much support this initiative and the hard work that's gone into promoting it as well as organizing it.
Thank you. Appreciate you taking your time. Communications, Katie.
Council, I have a letter from One Federal Credit Union dated February 7th, 2020. The letter is from Heather Clancy Youngs, the executive or CEO of One Federal Credit Union. In it, she is requesting council reconsider the current ordinance and asks council to review the current standards which prevent her business from moving forward with the installation of their electronic message center. So she's asking council to review the electronic sign ordinance because it poses unnecessary hardships to their building or to their business.
Okay, thank you. We also have letter B.
I do. This one is from the Academy Theater. They are also requesting that council take a look at the electronic sign ordinance because they too would like to install an electronic computer-generated LED signage for economic purposes as well as for the safety of their employees. They go on to explain that their proposed variance will meet all of the defined special exemptions and will adhere to all the necessary restrictions on electronic signs.
Okay, thank you. Communications, Steve.
I have a letter here from Taylor Henton, 912 South Morgan Street. She is writing to ask council to consider supporting the volunteer appointment policy. Ms. Henton also details her own experience with trying to be appointed to an open position on the Meadville Area Recreation Authority and how frustrating she found that process.
Okay. Letter B.
I have a letter here from Elizabeth Searle White, dated February 12th, 2019. She lives at 204 Meadow Street. She is writing to strongly encourage the city to adopt a policy of transparency and clearly defined process in the appointment of citizens to city boards, authorities, and commissions.
Letter E.
A letter from Lee Scandinaro of 230 Mount Hope Street. He is also writing with enthusiastic support of a new policy for appointing members to volunteer for local authorities, boards, and commissions.
Okay. Letter F.
This letter is from Jason Ramsey, dated February 13th, of 654 Cutler Street. He is writing in support of a standard public and advertised application process to invite and encourage community participation on volunteer boards.
Letter G.
This is from Julia Ludwig. It was an email that we received on February 14th. She resides at 464 Park Avenue, Apartment 1. She says that she has followed the discussion about the promises and limitations of the appointment process, and she strongly supports the suggested policy for standardizing that process.
And letter H.
This is from Dr. Armenia Dixon of 716 Jefferson Street. She had an opportunity to review the appointment policy and based strictly on the content of the policy, she believes it will help create a pathway for more citizens to become interested in participating in city government.
Okay. I did hand a letter to you guys from Pastor Gary,
It is slated for the March 4th meeting.
March 4th. Okay. Thank you. Manager's report. Andy?
Your Honor, just could I touch base with council on the first two letters, one from the One Federal Credit Union and Academy Theater. How does council wish to proceed? That could be, I guess it'd give you two paths, right? That could be refer that back to the Planning Commission for further discussion and review. However, it was the Planning Commission a few years ago, not, this ordinance dates back to 2017, right? So the ordinance that's in place was adopted by council in 2017 based on recommendations from the Planning Commission. I don't know whether you want a staff presentation on the ordinance, the particular aspects of the ordinance that would impact the issues described here. Looking for direction from council on how you wish to proceed.
It's my understanding that the Planning Commission is about to take on signage as part of the zoning ordinance update. I wonder if we can ask them to consider some of the recommendations made within the limits of an historic district.
Present us, like you said, have staff present us with what's going on.
I suppose it could be a both and proposition too, that we can present the ordinances, certain conditions, the aspects of the ordinance that are impacting these two particular entities.
So we don't understand everything. We don't know exactly where you're talking and how much is the historic district and what exactly you're talking about with these signs.
Maybe at the next meeting I can do a presentation on what the rules are, and then council can decide if they want to refer that to planning commission at that point.
Yeah,
Or is there-
I'd like a presentation.
Is that consensus of council then for the next meeting presentation?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Log back into my machine, which will shortly run out of battery. So just a number of items related to my manager's report. So immediately prior to this meeting, council received a presentation from the Pennsylvania Economy League. Pennsylvania Economy League was one of two entities that had submitted proposals for consulting services to the city under the Strategic Management and Planning Program. That's the grant that the city had received from the Department of Community and Economic Development for essentially sort of 5-year financial planning and other recommendations around governmental efficiency. Excuse me, our next proposal will be next Wednesday at 5:15 p.m. That is Grassroots Solutions, I believe is that the name of the firm, who will make a similar presentation to council in this room at 5:15 next Wednesday. We've talked for, gosh, probably 2 months or more now about the Market House ceiling project. We had the presence of mind to check for asbestos, and in fact there is asbestos present in the drywall, on the plaster in the ceiling, and we're seeking contract quotes from a certified abatement contractor for handling that.
In just that area, Andy, or the whole second story?
Well, we've conducted testing in the first section that would needs to be addressed first. We've not done, but I suspect it's of the same era and the same, so, and it's okay that it's there, right? Just in the area where it's fallen that we'll have to address it.
Okay.
And so in that area, but yeah, so in terms of any further demolition, we'll need a certified asbestos contractor to handle that work.
Are we keeping people out of that area in the meantime?
So they're not using the space actively,
But
so.
they shouldn't be passing through it.
Right, we'll be taking those precautions, yeah. So it's a stable situation at this point. There's no further debris falling or anything. The council's aware we're also had sought proposals from pension fund managers. Next Monday, we have the subcommittees of the pension boards have sort of day-long presentation from 5 firms lined up next Monday from 10 to 2, and those subcommittees of the pension boards will review that. Councilman Roa is serving as a representative from council's finance committee on that. So following those interviews, the pension boards will then have to decide, and then we'll be making a recommendation to proceed with a particular firm. So more to follow on that topic. Last meeting, Mary Ann Banana, Director of Community Development, talked about a Tuesday, March 3rd stakeholders meeting hosted by us, but with the presentation by the Pennsylvania Downtown Center, and essentially the Department of Community and Economic Development about the Keystone Communities Program. So that's going to be Tuesday, March 3rd at 6 p.m. in this room. And we've invited a number of stakeholders. Council has received invitations, the Redevelopment Authority Board of Directors. And we've invited representatives from the Economic Progress Alliance, the City Planning Commission, Allegheny College, Meadville Medical Center, Westbury, the Northwest Pennsylvania Investment Cooperative, the Downtown Business Alliance, the Chamber of Commerce, Visitors Bureau, Streetscape Committee, our facade, the Redevelopment Authority's Facade Committee, the Beautification Committee, Shade Tree Commission, Master Gardeners, the Meadville Neighborhood Center, the Arc of Crawford County, as stakeholders to learn more about the Keystone Communities Program and how we might proceed towards designation. Councilman Roa, last meeting, had asked about the status of the Port Street Footbridge project. And in fact, just last Friday, I believe, PennDOT, through their ECMS system, the Electronic Contract Management System, did receive bids and open bids. And the low bidder is Shivers Construction for a bid of $170,998. They were one of 7 bidders. Ranging, they were the low from $179,998. The high was $499,289. We're still in the process. We just received this information today, so it's not clear to me. This is a PennDOT managed project, so it's federal funding provided to the city. So I'm not asking council to approve the contract tonight. We will further review this, the PennDOT process. But it may well be on your March 4th agenda to award a contract. In terms of the timing of that project, the initial schedule is laid out in the bidding documents, will be dependent upon the PennDOT contracting process. but in a perfect world, there would be a notice to proceed issued on or about April 1st. And with mobilization, et cetera, with a project completion estimation of October, at the end of October. So we're essentially looking at a full 6 or 7 month process for the project, once that notice to proceed has been issued by PennDOT. Lastly, we've had some ongoing dialogue as well in terms of, I had mentioned last meeting, and in reference to the Tribune's article earlier this year about the need for new fire apparatus, and looking at both to replace an engine pumper and also the aerial ladder truck. There are two funding opportunities coming our way. One is the federal AFG program, the alternative to, what does AFG stand for? Firefighting grants. What's the A? Alternative to fire? It doesn't matter. The federal AFG program. We have applied several years in a row and have been denied. The chief had made contact with a grant writing consultant who has a very specific experience with this program. More or less indicates to us that it's a lost cause applying for this. It's incredibly competitive. And so, for instance, last year, nationwide, there was just shy of $12 million made available to career departments, such as the city of Meadville. So not volunteer departments, but career departments. So $12 million nationwide. And of that, there were only 28 vehicles funded nationwide, only 2 of which were aerial ladder trucks. And in the year prior, 2017 anyhow, there were 96 vehicles that we got, whose applications got reviewed. So I'm going, because we've got the application more or less ready to go, would like council's consent to at least proceed for a March 13th deadline to apply. We would resubmit our application, but the reality is it's probably not a really true funding path available to us. Is there a consensus of council to at least follow that path, since we're...
Can I kick in for a minute?
You can, yep, I can.
So, most of the council members, other than Jim, you would probably remember this, they did a fire study back in August of 1996, was the last fire study that was done. I joined council in 98, beginning of 98, and this study that was done, you have to remember, we had 5 volunteer fire departments in the city of
Probably
Meadville.
3 active ones.
But I think there were 5 that was mentioned in the report. The reason I'm bringing this up is we haven't had a study done since 1996. A lot of things have changed. We no longer have the volunteer fire departments like we did have. We're finding throughout not only the Commonwealth, but throughout the country, that fire volunteers are slowly dwindling and having a hard time. We're facing that in our own county right now. And so when we talk about fire trucks and we're going for grant monies, I guess I'd like, possibly if council would agree, to have you do some research on looking at a firm to come in to guide us to the future of what fire apparatuses we need, basically a study. I'm not sure what this study cost at the time. Jim, do you happen to remember? It's not that I'm wasting taxpayers' dollars, but if we would have a study done and they would come in with recommendations, it's far from our staff members making those recommendations. Could that be helpful in future grant monies with those studies being done? And it also gives us council the ability to look at what an outside group would recommend for the types of trucks, what we need.
It's interesting to me, specific to the fire apparatus, right? So it's been a good while since I've read the 1996 study, which was really department-wide, right? Looking at staffing and call volume and other things. Like you say, there's been a number of variables that have changed, right? Even in our own career department, since that study, we've reduced from a complement of full 15 firefighters to 12 several years ago. And we now run with a minimum shift staffing of 3 men per shift, 3 firefighters per shift, which then impact, right, apparatus manning apparatus. I would be interested in seeking that, looking for a consultant maybe that would provide us feedback on on that very thing. I'd be glad to do that research to see what's available, who's out there, who.
Or at least to see
who
what
does
the cost would be on this, because I think what we may be seeing in the future, and we were just discussing this when the advising group, I call them, was just here. Volunteer fire departments are again, they don't have the staffing like they used to. And I'm seeing, as in Warren County and other counties, that the city paid departments are now covering first responding calls to the other communities. And that could be a cost. You heard that cost that they were talking about. So that's why I would like to see the study done, or at least see what the cost of the study would be. It might save us some money down the road. Not only that, I think our union, we just signed a contract for a 4-year agreement, did we not, with the fire department?
Yes.
So we have a little bit of time to have this study done, if it's affordable cost, and council would, agree to that.
Your Honor, just for clarification, are you looking specifically to sort of vehicle and apparatus or an entire departmental-wide fire service?
Can we divide the two? I mean, is it possible to ask for both of those, or you just want to
Yeah, I mean,
divide
we
one?
would have to just define a scope of work. I mean, to get a quote right, or to, would have to decide whether.
My concern is we don't have the staff we did back in 1996. And our current staff, we have 5 projects that we really have to work on. Not only do we're looking at policy, but we have a budget that we already know we're out of whack with, and we need to work with that. So I don't want to tie up staff's time in a big research if it's feasible and not so costly to have a company come in and do it. And as a matter of fact, you might even want to try to contact this other company. I don't know if they're still in business, but it's a PAR group out of Illinois. See if they're still in business.
I can certainly research that.
Counselor, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think that we're slowly, as the losing the volunteers, I think we're slowly taking more of a countywide, we're taking more of a foothold.
Well, regionalization would be
Yes.
the answer to this, but I can
That's what
assure
they're
you
gonna
over
come
the
back,
last 20 years.
That's what they're gonna come back and say.
Well, in the last 20 years, that was pretty rough to try to sell, but,
Very rough.
Autumn, feelings?
Yeah, and I guess to this point, I would be interested in if Vernon and Westmead would be interested in, maybe sharing a study and doing it across.
So now I hear 3 things: a fire apparatus consulting study, a city department study, and now a regionalization study.
Well, we have a fire truck that we gotta get replaced. And if we're gonna be doing the grant money, I think that would be probably one priority, in my thinking.
Let's get hold of the consultant first, see if he's still alive.
I'll conduct some research.
You're still with us, I'm hoping you're with us.
The other funding opportunity is then, and this is much more viable in terms of fire truck funding, grant funding, and financing. So the U.S. Department of Agriculture has the Community Facilities Grant and Loan Program. It's a rolling deadline, so they've actually just been refunded. They've got funds available. It's a grant and loan combination program. Would be eligible. Would probably very likely get a $50,000 grant, be eligible for a $50,000 grant, and then would finance the rest. So whether that's an pumper engine that's around $500,000 total, or an aerial, which is about $1 million, double that.
What was the interest?
About 2.75% is what it is currently. Those, once you apply and you're awarded, then they lock in your interest rate, so it's a fixed interest rate for 15 to 20 years can be the financing term, which is really attractive actually, in terms of an interest rate. So if we're gonna look to a consultant potentially in terms of apparatus, and since this is a rolling deadline, I think we should explore that first before maybe get recommendations in terms of apparatus before we would apply to this. But I think this is a very viable funding source that we should consider.
Do you think we'll get that information early enough for this?
Well, it's a rolling deadline. So it's the program is funded now. They're actively seeking applicants for first responder type projects. I think we would be very competitive in submitting an application, but it might be useful to have.
I think it would be helpful if we had that information. I'm hoping it'll bump us up to get the grant.
I think
That's
that's
what I'm
very
hoping.
possible.
So I guess I'm okay with you doing the fire apparatus first. You guys okay with that?
Is that what you're
Since we-
saying?
I'm interested in seeking consultant for the fire apparatus recommendation, based on manpower size, call volume, service area. So I'm recommending to council that we apply for the AFG grant, throw our hat in the ring. It's very unlikely we're gonna get it, but we can fairly easily submit an application. I would tee that up for the March 4th for council to authorize signatures on the grant application, and then staff will conduct research on if there's what consulting opportunities there are in terms of fire apparatus.
When you're talking to the consultant, you might want to throw the other three out too, just for the hell of it. The heck of it, sorry. I did pretty good so far. You okay with that, Jim?
Yeah, I'm just calculating how much it would cost.
Yeah,
Per month.
that debt service is not budgeted.
You okay? All
Whatever your math tells you, it's not budgeted.
I understand.
right, you got to go ahead to do it.
All right. So we'll proceed as report. And I think, Your Honor, that might be all I have in my list.
Okay. Under old business, discussion volunteer appointment policy and procedure. So, you know what, I'm gonna tee this up to Autumn because this is her and Larry's kind of project, I guess. So, you wanna take it over?
Sure. It's the project of lots of people. Many of them are here. And many of them signed the cover letter that was sent out with the council packet, sent out with the letter that was read last council meeting, and then sent out with a revised policy proposal. Just to be clear, what we were looking for today is kind of the blessing of a majority of council just to move on to the next phase. That next phase would be circulating the policy out to existing authority board and commission members for their feedback. After receiving that, giving them a window of time, receiving that feedback, incorporating that feedback, then a finalized policy would be brought to council for a vote. So not looking for a vote to adopt today, just looking for kind of a nod of approval to move ahead to kind of the next phase of this kind of iterative process. So just to be clear, that's what we're looking for today. As kind of detailed in the cover letter that was sent out, and as Kirsten explained, we did incorporate what we heard from council last week. Overall, we simplified. We tried to make it easier to understand, a lot less dense. We amended the publicity requirements that would mean that it'll cost virtually nothing to implement. We removed the stipulations for currently operating boards, so trusting that those that have bylaws are following them. Others can operate, they've got bylaws, can adopt them if they want to, but recognizing that those boards, authorities, and commissions operate as independent. So we removed that, which again also helped to simplify the process overall. I met with Andy and Katie to kind of review the process from a staff perspective, to get their feedback as far as administration of a process like this. That helped immensely in kind of tailoring this process to what currently happens in Meadville, the way that appointments are done, the way that our cycles happen. Most notably, it helped to simplify rather than having 2 cycles. We learned that most appointments happen in January and February for almost all authorities, boards, and commission, I think with the exception of maybe RDA that's in May. So that just means, one cycle can kind of capture all of that, and that we can maybe follow the same steps throughout the year as needed, but that mainly the bulk of appointments can happen through this one cycle. They were helpful in many other ways too, and it's great to have their feedback. So that also helped to shape, so council's feedback and staff feedback really helped to shape the proposal that you have in front of you today. So with that, I guess we can discuss further, and again, looking for a nod of approval to move on to the next step, or directive to go back to the drawing board again, which we can.
There.
I'm comfortable with moving forward. Council, I think it's a good policy, I think it's what we need. And I feel that we, as council, should move forward to open up and be more transparent. That's one of the things that we talked about, and I feel that's one of the things as council we should do, is help to involve our community, give them tools to become involved in working with city council and with the local organizations that are looking for employees or help.
Okay. Sean?
I just had why is it 16? Why did you say age 16?
Age 16 is to, folks felt pretty strongly about encouraging folks to
Really young?
get involved young. There was a concern from staff as far as authorities might legally have an age requirement for folks to be voting members on authorities. That would be determined, I think that would be set in the bylaws of each authority, in which case, when we took the policy to authority boards and commission, right, they can make that comparison across their own bylaws.
And I'll just speak to that. So when I raised that concern, it wasn't so much, I'm not aware right off that in the Municipal Authorities Act, for instance, that there's an age limit, but there are fiduciary responsibilities that you can sue and be sued as an individual when you serve and make a decision in certain capacities.
I'd say 18 just because you're an adult.
Well, I guess I'm gonna go to our solicitor, because that was my biggest concern. If you put a 16-year-old, 17, 18, even 18, if there is a legal action taken against the authority for misrepresenting funds, not pausing funds, or just not following their bylaws, that puts them in a liability risk of being sued. Now, if they're 16, does that fall back onto the parents because they're the legal guardian of that person?
Right, so obviously we're dealing with minors in this scenario, and I think I can double check the code to be sure there isn't any sort of age reference in there, but the authorities would each have the discretion then to modify their bylaws or to ensure compliance with their bylaws, as Autumn pointed out. I can double check anything, as I said, that's in the code to kind of shore up that answer, but I think this is an issue that falls onto each of the boards.
Okay, I want that followed up on, because I think the liability, and I'll explain in a few minutes why I get concerned about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Especially if there's, 16, you still have legal guardianship.
Right.
So, and where does that fall onto the board members? It would be, I have no problem with 18 or above, but I do have a problem, I think, with
I
16.
get the whole, you want younger kids to feel more involved because they have more to offer, but I'm just concerned, the
So,
age.
if you could
Yeah.
find that for us,
Certainly.
that would be helpful.
What would they be doing at 16 that they would be sued for?
Oh, I'll explain one to you in just a few minutes. Did you have any?
Yeah, I still have some issues with the revised policy. Again, we don't even need a single appointment cycle. We just need to make appointments. I agree that we need to advertise appointments on the city website and some other places. We have not been as diligent in that as we ought to be. However, we are with limited staff, and if we follow private industry, for example, the city clerk acknowledging receipt of each application, that is not done in private industry. You receive all kinds of solicitations for employment, and you don't, in the industry, you don't even respond. If someone's disqualified, the fact that you had no response meant that you were disqualified or not considered. I've taken the liberty of making some proposal changes. Did you pass those? I think there should be enough for Andy. There we go. For a discussion draft. I'm certainly not ready to work to do this tonight.
Did you give her a copy for reference?
Sean, I agree with you. I think they need to be at least 18 years of age. We need to post vacancies on the website. I defined what vacancies would be considered: death, relocation, and resignation. Expiration of terms, clarified that, because there are people whose terms have expired and we've not appointed. And it clarifies that you continue to serve, if you want to, until your replacement has been appointed. A lot of this encapsulates what has been done and what has been past practice. No term limits. As far as the selection process, the city council, as it's composed from time to time, is the entity to decide a process. Time frame, the same thing. Optimally, if we get this going, we won't have the delayed timeframes that we have had in the past. But to be bound into a time frame, I'm not sure is doing any good to anybody. And as far as a formal application, I think if you just make it sufficient for the people. I gave you an application last week from someone that we did it in 40 words. You didn't have to do 500 words on how I spent my summer vacation. And there was no need to be going into that amount of detail. If someone needs to have additional information on a person, by all means, council members should take the initiative to contact that person and get acquainted with them. And I don't recommend written rejections.
I think you do. I think there should be a formal application. There should be a formal letter of rejection. Number one, it's out of courtesy and respect for the individual. You know, there was the case where the person, Taylor, had applied. Over a year later, she never heard anything. I think personally that's disrespectful. Most businesses, they give you a letter within a certain period of time, whether you're hired in a position or not. Also, it creates a paper trail, and if there's any type of legal fallback, we can go and say, hey, this is the paperwork, yes, we received it, this is our answer, this is what happened. I think it's just, it covers both parties.
Well, do we agree to disagree on that? I think there's more liability to us.
I do think we need some explanations on some things. Jim and I were on the committee that interviewed for the appointment to the authority of Meadville Area Recreation Authority. We did interview and forgive me, can't remember. Shanus. And I'm going to explain the process in that. Is the city of Meadville gives the Meadville Area Recreation Authority $130,000 of taxpayers' money. And we make that contribution to them to operate their authority, or the Meadville Area Recreation Authority. We actually stopped payment to the Meadville Area Recreation Authority after a couple council members asked me to attend a board meeting of theirs. When I attended the board meeting, there just needed to be some procedures put in place and some accountability that we wanted to talk about. And when we did that, that's when Taylor and, I forgot her name, Shana, applied for it. And we were actually looking at two specific things. Legal advice for the authority and also a bookkeeper or someone with financial background. Since that situation has been fixed, I have sent a letter out after the recommendation of council. We actually brought that up at 2 meetings ago. The letter was sent out once everything kind of got put back in place with the rec authority and the payments were made then. So there was a little bit of background why we did not make that recommendation at that time. Because we were actually looking for, to help them get the proper people in the right places to make the proper decisions of $130,000 tax dollars of the city of Meadville. That's our responsibility as council. When we give money to the authorities, we are accountable for how that money is used. And I'm glad to say everything's working great now and the procedures are in place. So that was the reason why we didn't make the appointment. I thought I should make that clear. And again, the Mark Authority was willing to work with us and everything turned out well.
Just like your
So, go ahead.
Just like you're responsible to make sure that those things are in place, you're also responsible to the residents that want to become involved with that to make, you know, it's almost like you're saying that, well, no, we don't want to, we want to make these stipulations, so it's who you want to appoint. If it's an open process and the applications are there, but it sounds like, I'm just confused as to how you're making this decision.
Well, these two individuals applied for the
Right,
position,
but-
but we were already into a discussion of.
And I could be misunderstanding, but what you're saying sounds like what you're saying now is that, well, if there's no formal policy or procedure to even for an application or anything, again, it's gonna be.
Well, I'm not against the application, so don't misunderstand me. I wanted to clarify why we didn't make these two appointments to that authority.
Okay.
Okay, because at that point, we were looking at getting them specific help on the authority, whether it be a bookkeeper or legal advice.
Okay.
And that got taken care of.
Okay.
So there's guidelines there, and I have sent the letters out to both of them asking. Matter of fact, you see on your agenda that Tyler's on that to make the appointment, or Taylor is on that to make the appointment.
I think what we're hearing now, and really what has motivated the development of this policy, certainly for the residents that I've worked with, to craft it, is a real need for a more transparent process. So something that is put into writing, that we can hold ourselves accountable to, that we can hold staff, council accountable to, that residents can hold us accountable to. There's just so much room for kind of gray area and interpretation one way or the other, when likely, without ill intent, maybe there were appointments that were made that, addressed kind of gaps that you thought maybe existed on the rec authority. But from the public's perspective, there were folks that were applying and then appointments were made and folks that they knew, were
Well, if I'm not mistaken,
went
not to
without.
clear us, but we did explain that to the two interviews that we met with, did we not?
That's my memory.
Okay.
I have reason to believe that that is not the case, but I will say that overall it points to a need for a transparent process that is just clearly defined. And again, I appreciate Jim. I appreciate the time and effort and attention you gave to kind of come with a maybe an alternate proposal. I feel strongly about considering the one that residents crafted together. And also that did take into account staff considerations, right? So staff did see it, they had a chance to weigh in on whether or not they thought that they could address, each application as it came in, and those points at least did not raise a concern. So I feel pretty strongly about moving forward with the proposal that's been presented for a transparent, kind of standard process, that puts us into a routine, that makes it known, how we do things, the way we do it, that gets us into a cycle. I don't think it's maybe as complicated as we're kind of making it out to be, but I think that it is worth moving on, getting the input of authority board and commission members, right? They can compare it against their bylaws, they can make sure that, it's in line with what they want to do, but we can't do that, right, until we've got the
Well, I agree. I
stamp
mean,
of
that
approval
would,
from council.
I'm okay with the process,
Mhm.
as long as that the chairman or the group
Mhm.
have their input, because they're the ones
Yeah.
who they have to work with.
Yeah, so that's the kind of next
And we
step.
want to make sure that they get the individuals that they need to do what they need to do,
Exactly.
okay?
Is
So-
this going to be a binding? Is this binding? Do we have to go by it?
What?
This whole process?
We can change anytime we want,
I know,
majority
but
of
I mean, is
council.
it binding until we change it, or can we just?
It's a
Right, so
policy
it's a
that we
policy.
should probably held
Right, so
held
you-
accountable to.
Complete authority to adopt it or not, but once it's adopted, then you're bound to it until you amend it. Or
But we can amend, and if
Thank you.
if we're finding it's difficult to follow, or maybe not in line with what we need, or maybe we're doing this and we're putting it out there and we're still having trouble, getting interest, then then we can change.
Well,
But
with the ones that Jim just gave us, because we just got these tonight,
So you have a chance.
so we didn't see this. Does this fall with your glancing at it, does it fall into any of the issues that would change going forward with it?
Just from looking at it now, first of all, I will, I'll underscore again, I think the importance of considering the policy that residents worked on. But this one in particular, to me, just looks like, one, I think, Jim, you described it that way, is basically what we do now, but in writing. And it doesn't, I think, and I recognize maybe, right, that it looks cumbersome to have a schedule and timeline on paper to read, and maybe it looks like a lot to manage, but I think that that's so important, because if residents just don't know what the timeline looks like, what to expect, what the process is, I think the more explicit you can be with that, the better. I'm not seeing that here. In fact, I'm seeing that basically just city council can decide that at their will. And I feel strongly about moving forward with the policy that we've been looking at that's been revised, that folks have brought to us tonight.
Well, as one person on council, I would definitely want an answer on the 16.
I will provide a written opinion to all of you
Okay.
as to all the ramifications of having a minor serve in any of those capacities.
And again, one other thing, I want the authorities themselves to have the input. I understand that you had a group of people, and I thank you that you're here, and know most of you. There are 13,000 people in the city of Meadville that we represent. We don't represent just 12 or 15 or 30 or 20. We represent the entire city of Meadville. And even though there's just a group, I appreciate you guys doing it, but there are 13,000 people in the city of Meadville. So with that being said, I don't mind going forward with it, as long as we get the answer for the 16, and I want that in writing so we can put it into the minutes. And then also meeting with the, and if Jim has any of these that, like I said, we just.
Sure, and it can take more time to kind of cross-compare and try and incorporate anything.
Yeah,
that you-
then should we act on anything tonight?
There's nothing to act on yet.
I
You know what I'd
think
like to
the
do,
action-
honestly? I'd like to hear what the authorities have to say, because they're the one that has to work with this.
Yeah, and
When we appoint an authority,
The action.
and we appoint authority, our responsibility with that authority, other than the tax dollars that we give to them, is the authority. We can't go in and tell RDA what to do. I mean, we can guide the rec, and the reason for that is because it's $130,000. We have the right to pull that, we have the right to spend it any way we want, tax dollars. So I really would like to hear what the authorities have to say, because they're the ones that's gonna be working with the individuals. And
Just to make clear, we're not saying going in and telling them how, because that's one of the comments I heard, that they don't want someone coming in and tell them how to run. We're not going in trying to tell them how to run. What we're trying to do is make it easy for normal citizens, residents, to understand how to become involved in the programs. That's it in a nutshell. We're not trying to take anything from them, but we're trying to let the people that want to become involved and know the policy and the ways to do that. That's it.
And again, I don't want to harm anyone, you in the audience that have worked hard on this. You've taken a lot of time with it, and I'm sure a lot of it can be worked out. Again, I just want to make sure that we represent, when we took this office, once we took our oath, we represent all the taxpayers in the city of Meadville.
And by looking and listening to that, and I agree with you, we represent them, the residents, just as well as the water authority, so we have to be fair with both.
Sure.
We can't, I don't see how, or it wouldn't be right to say, no, we're gonna take what is a consideration from either authority and disregard what our residents, because they're the ones that are saying, we want to become involved, we want to know more about it. But by letting someone say, no, we don't want input from them is not right.
Right. So why don't we do
It's the
this?
whole city.
Right. Why don't we send this to the chair people, either the chairperson or the authority? And maybe what we need to do is set a meeting down.
Yes.
You and I used to do that a lot. We'd pull different organizations together. So that maybe what we need to do is pull the authorities together
I agree.
in one room, so you're not taking forever to do the process.
So-
And get their input.
Right.
Because their input's just as important as anyone else's. So I guess are we agreeable with that? That would be my suggestion for the next step.
In other words, you were not acting on it, you were simply giving it to them for some input.
I don't think we should go anywhere without the authorities themselves having input. I think that should be your next step.
You're right, I agree.
So, are we agreeable on that? I mean,
Go
Yeah, it's fine
forward,
with
go
me.
forward with this. I've always had a problem with how we appoint people, and I didn't think it was, I don't know what better term would be,
oh, you were a part of it for how many years?
yes, I know,
So,
6 years, 6?
Pardon me.
I know,
You were a part of it, so let's not forget that.
I know, I told you, everyone on every authority, you and me
I
appointed.
do remind people of things. With that, is it okay? Is that, you have,
Sounds good to me,
No,
yep.
no, no, no.
okay.
It's a consensus.
So
Katie, did you get all that?
Your city
I record for a
your city
reason.
manager needs clarification.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah,
It's
it
still
is.
confusing to me.
What is the direction or consensus of council? Is it for staff to distribute this to the chairman of the boards, authorities, and commissions for feedback? Are
Yes.
you had mentioned hosting a meeting.
Well, let's do that first. Let's give it to them, and let's ask them that. That can be part of the process. Send them what Autumn and them, I shouldn't say Autumn, what council is looking at. Send them the packet, get their input. Actually, I'm gonna do this. We have a chairman of one of the authorities. I mean, you're here in the room. So as chairman, how would you like to see that handled? I mean, you're chairman of the RDA, so how would you?
Yeah, well, I'd love to see the proposal, because I think there is some merit here. There's people, we beg people to try to come on our board, and we've got one guy that's gonna retire, and I don't know how we're gonna get a replacement. But it would be more fair to let everybody in the community know that there's an opening. So I'd like to see the policy and then take it back to the board and then have a little work session and discuss it, and then provide that feedback back to the city council.
Would you rather do that, just give the feedback to us than meeting with us? I mean, you're just one, but
I think so, for the first step, yeah.
is that okay?
Yeah, there's been talk about having some kind of structured feedback, so maybe some kind of guiding questions that maybe boards and authorities can take back, answer, and provide that, and happy to help work that out.
And with you guys, I'm gonna ask you, you guys help put it together. How do you feel about the process?
Who are you looking at?
I guess I'm gonna look at you, because everybody else walked out. They're tired, and they didn't wanna go through it. What's your thought?
Of the next step?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think hearing back from the authorities is really critical. Most of the people that have worked on it have either tried to sit on an authority or currently do sit on an authority. So the consideration is like well ingrained into working with the existing authorities and commissions. It only makes sense to talk to them and see what their process would be and what they need from it, and to go from there.
Okay. I've always tried to get input from the individuals as we're gonna affect. Thank
I
you.
did want to say, I don't know what the legal age is, but I know at Edinburgh University Council of Trustees, we have one student trustee that has voting rights, and that person has to basically run for the office, has to go through interviews, and is interviewed by the trustees, and is interviewed actually by the people in Harrisburg. And I'm absolutely amazed at some of the input that these student trustees, what we find ourselves in is the ivory tower. And they know what's going on out there in the campus, so it is very valuable information.
And what group age are you looking at? What's the age on? I'm just
Well, they're
curious.
college age, so it would be 17, 18,
18.
19, 20.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just think 16's too young, but that's my opinion.
it is pretty young, yeah.
To make decisions if you're given $130,000 to work with, for an example.
Normally, they end up to be juniors or seniors, so they're probably about 20.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Okay, we're all fine going that way?
So in terms of time frame, right, many of the boards and authorities are through, they're typically meet on a monthly schedule, right? So some of them aren't gonna, it'll be the March meeting schedule, if you will, for most of them, I would think, before So you might not truly get any type of feedback until April.
That's what I was wondering, because there's some just had meetings today. In the meantime, you can give us that background.
I will.
Anything else? All right, let me find my paperwork, guys, because it's everywhere.
7B.
All right, thank you. Discussion, council planning retreat. Well, I think we just did part of it.
Can we table this?
Can we table it? That's up to council. What do you guys want to do? You want to table the retreat for a little bit longer, or?
Yeah.
I hear yes. All right, so take it off the schedule and we'll put it back on the agenda later. My pen just didn't work. Okay, boards and authority and commission appointments.
So just keeping before you, we have the current list of vacancies, we just have that there for your information. And then Streetscape Committee is not on this vacancy list. Is there a prescribed number of Streetscape Committee advisory committees? There's 5. So is there a current vacancy then that should be on this list? Okay, so there would be a vacancy on the Streetscape Committee. And then that's there because, so there is a vacancy, and then, can you just describe historically how that position's been filled? I know there's,
Historically, there's 2 at-large members, 1 member from Shade Tree, 1 member from Planning Commission, and 1 member from Beautification Committee. And right now, it's the Shade Tree Commission appointee that's vacant right now.
Beautification.
Beautification, sorry.
Beautification.
Beautification, I'm sorry.
Okay.
so and what does the Streetscape Review Committee do, Gary, and why is it important that we have that committee filled?
They review any additions or new construction of anything other than a single-family dwelling in the city. So they'll take a look at any new commercial construction, take a look at it when it looked from the street. They'll look at landscaping, colors, building materials, signage, lighting, parking, all kinds of things.
So they gotta have kind of a construction background?
No, just anyone that has a sense of what things maybe should look like, maybe representative of a city resident. And they give recommendations, non-binding recommendations to the builder, to say maybe you should try this or try that, and the developer can take it or leave it. It's just part of the construction process. Before I can take formal application for building permit, they need to meet with the Streetscape Committee.
Okay.
So a member of the, if I'm correct, because Autumn, I think you're on the Beautification Committee, a member of the Beautification Committee is willing and interested in serving on said Streetscape Committee. That would be Josh Sherritts.
Yes.
And so it's presumably a recommendation from the Beautification Committee to appoint Josh Sherritts to that.
There was a vote, yes,
Position.
in favor of
Okay.
Josh, I believe.
So I don't know if council's inclined to make that appointment, but that's
Well, that
the
was my
nature of
next
it.
question, because I know we discussed about appointments, and we're gonna hold off on making the appointments until the process was done. So we have 2 individuals to appoint. I guess I can just ask for a motion second.
Also, I'll move.
Second?
Second.
Are we wrapping on both, or just first?
No, we're gonna do them individually.
Okay,
So we're gonna do Josh.
right.
Okay, is there any questions from council?
Josh is a good choice.
I don't know what the term is right off the top of my head, but we would put it into the,
Do you want me to find it real quick?
if you're inclined.
So we're actually doing now what we have been doing for
Exactly.
years. Hate to say it, but that's exactly happening.
As far as appointments, I've only been doing that the last couple of weeks,
Yeah.
so we just been plowing ahead, so I think you're probably fine.
So the appointment actually expires December 31st, 2020. So he'll be up for reappointment at the end of this year.
End of this year, okay.
Is that because beautification is
Yearly.
here?
Streetscape has its own appointment
Okay, so
schedule.
he's filling a,
Yeah, so that's just for his streetscape
gotcha.
beautifications on its own.
Okay. So you're taking the minutes, so throw that in there.
Will do.
Roll call?
Donahue,
Aye.
McKnight,
Aye.
Roa,
Aye.
Vogel,
Hi.
Stearns.
Aye. So I sent 2 letters out, we only had Taylor respond, the other one we did not get a response from?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. So appointment to the Meadville Area Recreation Authority.
Okay, but which term? There are two different terms, so we need to clarify.
Oh, they weren't both at the same time?
I don't think so.
No, one's
They're in your
20.
packet right in front of you, there's a table. And they're-
Got it.
So, so as a point of just meeting organization, is council acceptable, so in letters of interest, regardless of this one or others, I would prefer to move them under, in the future, when we would have a standing item under old business for appointments, that we would put all the letters of interest under boards, authorities, commissions, appointments, as opposed to a communications, and then it just structures the agenda better if you're amenable. So that's why
Yeah,
this
that's good.
letter of interest it appears down
I
there.
wonder why it was down there.
All
So,
right,
good job.
There's a rationale.
There you go. Okay, so we have 2 5-year terms. One term expires in 2021 on the Recreation Authority, and the other one expires on 2024. So it's your choosing.
Who's choosing?
Council's.
Councils.
Sticker till 24.
Did they get to weigh in?
Well, maybe we can use different terms there. I mean, that, yeah.
Did Taylor get to
Okay.
select which one she wanted?
I don't think we gave them a choice. I think we just told them there was 2 openings. Is that what we did? 2024. Jim, you all right with that?
Works for me.
Yeah.
Larry? Autumn?
Sure, if she's okay, I mean, sure,
She's
yes.
up,
She
yeah.
can always resign.
She can resign, so,
You all right
yeah.
with that?
All right,
So we need a motion and a second.
correct.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Roll call?
Donahue?
Aye.
McKnight?
Aye.
Roa?
Aye.
Vogel?
Aye.
Stearns?
Aye. Okay. I don't think there's anything else under old business. Andy, anything else that you has come up and thought
I
about?
don't believe so, Your Honor.
Okay, so let's go to new business. We're ordering our money tonight, $50 worth. So new business, discussion and spring cleaning up. I guess I'll throw that to you, Andy.
Give me 30 seconds, okay. In your packet then, so the beautification committee had inquired, at least I think this was the context of your inquiry, Autumn, but the beautification committee inquired about the planning of spring cleanup day, whether they might coordinate some other efforts as a committee. And so it seemed apropos, there's a 50-cent word, to bring this before council for discussion in terms of setting a cleanup date. So in front of you is just a 1-page summary from 2016, 17, 18, and 19, just sort of basic expenses, revenue expenses. Essentially the last 2 years, which are probably about average, have cost us just shy of $3,000. You'll see the participation there. So I posed 2 questions to council. 1, do you wish to set up a cleanup day? And 2, when do you wish to do that? The historical formula has been the second Saturday of May for these past 4 years. At one point I knew what the second Saturday of May was. I feel like it's the 14th, but I'll confirm.
Well, you know, I'm in favor of doing this because it
No,
gives
it's
our,
May 9th, sorry.
I'm in favor of doing this because it gives our residents the opportunity to clean up their property, you know, and get stuff away from the property at a low cost of getting rid of it. Because if not, it's just gonna keep piling up. So, to me, it's a way to help with the slum and blight in the city.
Right.
That's my input.
So I'm gonna, if I'm hearing consensus of yes, we are interested as a body of council in holding it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And then question number 2 would be when. So by formula would be Saturday, May 9th. And there's enough planning here, right, in terms of getting the date out, coordinating with staff and overtime that it can be scheduled at whenever.
So there was discussion, I don't think it made its way into any kind of formal recommendation from beautification committee, but there was discussion at the meeting about holding it maybe the week prior, the weekend of the 9th, right? The 9th is second Saturday, so there's a lot going on downtown. It's also the weekend of graduation at Allegheny College, and there was some interest in maybe not having folks hauling trucks of, disposal through town, and maybe cleaning up prior to folks coming into town, and then, so there, it doesn't look like it's made its way into any kind of formal recommendation, but there was discussion in the beautification committee about that. They also last year, I think, tried to do some kind of coordinated community cleanup effort, where folks would come. They're still trying to work through the logistics of that. How do you let some folks come and just bring trash that they gathered throughout town cleaning up, but other folks, right, have to pay for truckload, and so they're working through that. But there was also a lot of community events that happened on the second Saturday of May that made it difficult for them to do that. They try to engage business owners in kind of cleaning up outside their businesses, who kind of balked at the idea of cleaning up trash while second Saturday, which is like the busiest day of the month for them. So that would put it May 2nd if it's the Saturday prior.
Andy, you see a problem with that?
Nope, in fact, I discussed that possibility with the Public Works Director, who thinks that would be fine.
Let's make it May.
Can I give input? Mayor Stearns, I believe we were both at the same meeting last year discussing the spring cleanup, and one of the concerns was come May, greenery starts popping up, and it becomes really hard to find things if you are going through Shady Brook or Heidi Cooper or any of the other, kind of like less grassy areas. So that's just one thing that I'm remembering. The suggestion being like April or something like that, late April. But I do remember specifically when that was happening. The efforts of Thankful Thursday were really going strong, and they were finding at that time, which was early May, that things were just getting green. It was getting hard to identify stuff, where if you do it earlier, this winter's been kind of odd because we don't have stable snow, but if you do it earlier, everything's already matted down. It's a lot easier to find stuff. It might make cleanup efforts easier and more effective.
Yeah, we did talk about that now, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Especially, I think it was over in the Fifth Ward area where they were
Yeah,
doing
I
a lot
think
of
that
that
was,
cleanup, where the old landing strip was. So what's that present to us?
Well, I mean, my response would be this event has historically been for homeowners who are removing crap from their homes and their yards. It's not been directed towards general cleanup. So we have worked, so if there's a group that wants to go clean up Shady Brook Park, we will park it, we've accommodated by parking a truck. It's not, the $10 per load fee packing dumpsters has been really a residential based program. If we're looking to accommodate, to me, they're two different events, or could be two different efforts.
Well, that's what I was just wondering, is the Thankful Thursday still active? I don't know much about them.
I'm not
They,
really.
they are, yeah.
So maybe, Pete, we could talk to them, or you could talk with them, and we could do that as separate cleanup if you want to look at cleaning up, almost like adopting a highway, doing that and then keeping it separate for the residents. That way we can keep track of what's being disposed of and give the residents that opportunity. So we could actually make it two events, could we not, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, we've accommodated left and right special cleanup groups for whatever event, and we would continue to do so.
Hey, when's Mayor's, do they still have the Mayor's Day?
So, yeah, I think I sent you an email, I think, it's.
Because that could be used also.
It's the
that
Vistas,
time.
right,
We do,
Volunteer
Bicentennial
Service
Park
America.
is usually one of the areas, and the Market House was another one. So maybe we could bind that. I mean, I'm not sure when the Mayor's Day is, if they even call it that anymore.
And it's no longer called the Mayor's Day of Service, but it's
Thank God
something
it's councils, right?
similar. That might be in April, I'm not sure. It is Tuesday, April 7th, the National Service Recognition Day.
Is that too short of a time period? Anyway, you could do two separate doing that. That way we do keep the residential, people getting rid of their stuff, especially in the spring.
But no electronics.
No electronics, yes. And tires, you guys do every 2 years.
Every other year, yeah.
So does that come
We
up
did it
this
last
year?
year, no, it'll be your next year after
You're
that.
gonna save my tires until then?
You didn't come last time, did you?
No, you forgot to pick them up.
Oh.
So is that okay? Why don't we look at two different periods? So we're gonna go ahead and have May 2nd to clean up. That doesn't affect second Saturday or,
It's a week earlier at least.
yeah. Okay, and then Pete,
Yeah,
maybe
I'll
you're gonna
talk
get
to
together
people.
with Thankful Thursday people. We'll make those arrangements.
Yeah, and we can communicate with the office and figure out a truck and whatnot.
Okay. We try to accommodate. Okay, what else do we have?
Next is just a discussion item, the DEP recycling grant. So I reported, I think just our last meeting or recently, that we had just taken possession under a prior DEP 902 recycling grant of a leaf vacuum truck. This same program opens up with a funding round, an application deadline of March 20th. Because of the age of prior to the new truck that we just took possession of, we had essentially 3 leaf trailers that are pull-behind vacuum trailers. One was the most recent one, this was in my notes to council as I recall, was a 2012, 2013. The remaining 2 in our fleet are ancient. So the Public Works Department would be interested in using this program to apply again for an additional leaf vacuum truck that would then take out the 2 remaining leaf vacuum trailers. It's a 90% grant, 10% local match. In this case, the 10% local match would come out of stormwater program capital, not out of the general fund. And Gary has pointed out, we've also added some additional costs for marketing, printing of
Annual calendars and
our recycling calendars and refuse calendars that would be part of this grant application. Council's interested in moving forward, staff would then work to an application for that deadline.
Don't these trucks actually use fewer people as opposed to the trailer?
Yeah, so we've not deployed one yet, obviously, because we took possession of it in January, but yes, that's the goal, right? So that the operator, so I think it's worker safety is definitely an added bonus, and then uses less staff resources because they operate the truck and also then operate the boom.
Let's go for it.
Okay, is that heads nodding? We will proceed.
Yes.
So in a future agenda, probably March 4th, you'll see a resolution to authorize signatures on the grant application.
Okay, then we have a temporary emergency access agreement.
This won't be, I'll just explain the context. This is really just a template agreement. We had talked, we, the Public Works Department, finds ourselves right in certain situations, and in my notes to council, I used an example of, I think it was sometime in early January, where major tree fall in Mill Run, and we decided that we needed to, it was prudent and necessary to remove that tree and debris from Mill Run. It's on private property. We had to access private property. In that case, we had a willing landowner that says, yes, we get it. We trust you that you're gonna restore the property. But often, there's many times that we will find ourselves in a situation where it would be helpful to enter into a simple easement agreement with a private property owner for really one-time things like that. I'm proposing that council, if we choose to adopt this, that council would pass a resolution that would authorize me to sign these. So instead of working through the standard process of waiting to a council meeting, we take it to council to review and authorize, and there would be a resolution that would authorize me as city manager to enter into this simple template agreement. It provides for basic insurance, indemnification, and restoration of the conditions of a property owner. Elizabeth, do you have anything else to add in terms of the content of the agreement?
I think you covered it. We modeled it after some of the other temporary easement agreements we've used in the past. We just modified it to be appropriate for emergency circumstances, and it gives protection to both the city and the landowners.
Is this something the council should be notified that it's being done, or do we not need to do that?
I could it would be an after the fact situation, how we're intending to deploy it, but I could report in a manager's report or otherwise that we.
Why don't you do that, just in case we're approached, then we're not out in the left field. Is that all right?
So that's the concept behind this, but if council is amenable to this, then we would tee up a resolution that would sort of describe this situation with various whereases, and then also provide me authority to do that at a future meeting.
You okay with it, Jim?
I'm okay. I mean, we have a resolution now, do we not?
It's on
Not for the
now.
temp,
Discussion.
No, it's just for
Right.
discussion. I mean, is this set up to go if you wanted to do that, or did you wanna?
I did not provide the final language. I did happen to
Okay.
draft the resolution language already, but I did not provide that language yet to really
I'm seeing
anyone.
resolution 14 of 2020, that's why I'm asking.
So do you wanna wait till the next meeting, Andy? Or do you want it tonight?
Yeah. And I'd prefer, we'll have actual resolution language ready to go that'll be better prepared.
So you're okay with Jim?
Yeah, I'm okay.
You okay with Larry?
Yes.
Autumn?
I'm okay with that.
We're
Sean?
good to go.
Okay. Make it so. Okay, resolution authorizing signature for property maintenance agreement. Katie?
Resolved by the Council of the City of Meadville that the attached agreement is hereby approved and adopted substantially in the form attached hereto, as and for a binding and effective agreement of the City of Meadville in accord with its terms. And the mayor, controller, and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to execute and to attest such copies of the attached agreement in the manner required by law, as may be reasonably required for the purposes of the parties thereto.
Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion, Andy?
So just by way of context, this is for the DEP building at 230 Chestnut Street. I reported to council at the last meeting that the city took title to that building at the end of January, which had been, council had authorized that action last summer along with the redevelopment authority to transfer from the redevelopment authority to the city. The redevelopment authority is in the agreement that's attached here too. It's a management agreement for property management with Altair Holdings LLC. They provide supervision in terms of maintenance, work orders, communication, cleaning, overseeing the cleaning staff, really all aspects of property management and lease management negotiations. The action here would just be to assign that agreement for the city to accept that, to assign the agreement from the redevelopment authority to the city. We're not proposing to change the terms of that agreement. The redevelopment authority already acted at their meeting last week to assign it, and this would be the city taking similar action to essentially accept said agreement.
Motion?
You already did that.
Oh, we didn't. Any questions? I'm sorry.
We have reason to believe that DEP is happy with their
This was intended to make DEP happy, and it's working out
But
very
it's
well.
working.
And it's working out pretty well.
Good.
Keep them happy. Any other discussion? Roll call?
Donahue?
Aye.
McKnight?
Aye.
Roa?
Aye.
Vogel? Stearns?
Aye. Resolution, council for the city authorizing signatures for engineering design. Katie?
Resolved by the Council of the City of Meadville that the attached agreement is hereby approved and adopted substantially in the form attached hereto, as and for a binding and effective agreement of the City of Meadville in accord with its terms, and the mayor, controller, and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to execute and to attest such copies of the attached agreement in the manner required by law, as may be reasonably required for the purposes of the parties thereto.
Motion, please.
Motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Andy?
So also to make DEP happy, the redevelopment authority had embarked on a project to completely replace the HVAC system and lighting system, and had entered into a contract with CJL Engineering for the design and project management of that project. And similarly, the authority is assigning this agreement as well to the city, who is now owner of the building.
Any questions from council? Roll call?
Donahue?
Aye.
McKnight?
Aye.
Roa?
Aye.
Vogel?
Aye.
Stearns?
Aye.
And just by way of update on that project, so the kickoff meeting for that project is actually next week, I believe. So we have awarded already contracts to R.E. Johnson Electric for the lighting upgrade and to Rennick Brothers for the HVAC. So that'll kick off in earnest here. I think next week is the project kickoff meeting.
Okay, thank you. Resolution approving Voodoo Property LLC subdivision. I need to move my papers from.
Seco Warwick first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
First.
Go ahead.
Resolved by the Council of the City of Meadville that whereas in accordance with the provisions of section 1359.02 of Article 1359, the land subdivision regulations of the Meadville Municipal Code, the final plat for Seco Warwick subdivision, minor subdivision submitted to the city as prepared by Courtney and Knapp, registered surveyor, being a portion of assessment parcel number 3600-022-F-20 is hereby 1, approved, and 2, approved for recording. No public improvements guarantee is required because there are no public improvements planned or required by the said land subdivision regulations.
Motion, please.
Also move.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. I cleared my paper off. You need this?
No, it's up behind you.
I mean, Right, sign this one.
No, you'll sign these ones over here.
Okay.
So this one is of course, at Seco Warwick. We have it's up on the screen behind you. We have the 4-lane, the bypass right here, Mercer Street, Blue Bridge right here. This is Seco Warwick. This entire lot is the lot we're talking about here. This is the parent lot. You have the railroad right-of-way that crosses through this lot. This is actually one, even though you have the railroad going through it. What this would accomplish, this is the office building, the main office building here. This is, of course, the factory. It would actually run just east of the railroad, center line of the railroad right away here. That would create about a 1.25 acre lot with appropriate setbacks on the sides. It meets the lot width and size requirements in the Economic Development Corridor District. It has gone before both the county and the city planning commissions who recommend approval. This essentially would just cut off the main office building from the factory property. And essentially it means it's a preliminary to a sale of the property separately from the factory.
Hasn't sold yet, though.
It has not been sold yet.
Something about it. It's ready, though. Okay.
So actually two parcels.
So that's what's before council today. It meets all the requirements of our ordinances and is appropriate for approval if council so chooses.
Sean, any questions?
No.
Ron, any questions?
No, this was the planning commission meeting that happened yesterday, the special one. Okay. No questions.
Any questions, Jill?
No.
Motion, roll call.
Donahue?
Aye.
McKnight?
Aye.
Roa?
Aye.
Vogel?
Aye.
Stearns?
Aye.
I think the sale might just happen as soon as tomorrow, based on council's
That's
action
what I
tonight. Closing anyhow.
That's planned.
It's good move, it's good things coming.
It is. We'll go back up. One more. Okay, so this is the one, the voodoo one. This is for context. I'm sorry, Katie needs to do her thing.
Yeah.
Got a little excited.
You were hoping to go home,
Very
right?
exciting, I never get to talk.
Well, go ahead, I mean, take your time.
Gary, I'll handle this one.
Resolution approving Voodoo Properties LLC subdivision. Katie?
Resolved by the Council of the City of Meadville that whereas in accordance with the provisions of Section 1359.02 of Article 1359, the land subdivision regulations of the Meadville Municipal Code, the final plat for Voodoo Properties 2 LLC subdivision, minor subdivision submitted to the city as prepared by PCE Engineers, registered surveyor, being a portion of assessment parcel numbers 3300-030-B-1 and 3300-030-B-2 is hereby 1, approved, and 2, approved for recording. No public improvements guarantee is required because there are no public improvements planned or required by the said land subdivision regulations.
Motion, please.
Motion.
Second.
I'll second.
Gary, would you like to go ahead and take care of this one?
All right. So on the screen again behind you is a screenshot from our GIS system. This is on Bessemer Street. There's Bessemer right here. This is the Voodoo compound, formerly 84 Lumber. These are the open air storage containers. They used to have wood underneath it. This is the Bessemer building up here. Essentially what happened was the Economic Progress Alliance had previously owned all of this property. And when they owned all of this, they had, this is a line of evergreens here. They cut a couple of trees down, but put a little parking area right here actually, which is on what was the 84 property. This was done years ago. And when they went to sell it to Voodoo, the intent was to cut off this sliver here, this parking lot here, and convey it into, consolidate it into this lot here. That never happened for whatever reason, so we're essentially correcting something that should have happened a few years back. Andy, can you go to the next? This is the subdivision itself. So for context, Bessemer Street here, these are these two storage buildings, canopies here. What's going to happen is there's a fence right here. It's going to go all the way to the creek, and then come back around, subdivide this chunk off. It's about 34 feet by about 240 feet. Consolidate this lot into this lot. There were 2 variances granted, one for planting strips, which would have otherwise been required that can't fit in here, through here, and also a setback from this building. The setback is 25 feet. This is going to end up with a 2-foot setback here. So they received those setback variances and the parking strip variances, planting strip variances from the zoning hearing board in December. With those variances and with the consolidation of this parcel into this parent lot, parent tract here, it meets all the requirements of our ordinances, has gone to both county and city planning commissions, and have recommended approval.
Any questions from council?
Or you said that's existing parking.
It is. You saw in that previous, the GIS screenshot, that the parking is indeed already there. It's been there for a few years.
Yep.
Any questions? Roll call.
Donahue?
Aye.
McKnight?
Aye.
Roa?
Aye.
Vogel? Stearns?
Aye. Did really good with that, Gary. It's good to hear your voice once in a
I'm
while.
so excited.
Council member statement. Sean, I'll start with you.
Oh, let's see. I think there was a basketball game last night. Anyhow, Meadville won their basketball game last night. They beat Prep in the District 10 championship. I think it was Lamaro. He came through for us really big at the end. It was a lot of fun. Prep had beaten us really bad twice. And we beat them the big game, the one that counted the most. And the other thing was Xavier Hughes had a very big game. It was very impressive. That's the first time I've seen him come through like that. So we play next Tuesday. I lost my voice at the game because I was frustrated at the end with those fouls. But 4 fouls in a minute, that was tough.
Yeah.
But anyhow, we play next Tuesday against Du Bois, and I'm guessing Clarion or Slippery Rock.
It's Clarion.
Is it Clarion?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock? Okay. Well, it makes for a busy day Tuesday. But already scheduled. Wow, that's fast. All right. Well, that's all. Let's go ahead and go.
Sorry, Mark.
Oh, it's okay. No, it's my turn. Sorry. I want to thank the public again for coming. We had a really great turnout tonight, and it was great to see so many folks who had had a hand in the policy show up to support it. And for those of you who are just here because it's great. Thank you for being here. And thanks to those of you too that are trying to make maybe these meetings more accessible and digestible to folks. I appreciate your effort. I'll just mention that there is a Thankful Thursday is hosting a Warm Your Heart chili cook-off and hug-a-thon. Lee and I are the 2-year reigning chili champs, but yes, there's no prize or anything. But it's at the UU Church at 6 o'clock on Thursday. Anyone's welcome to bring chili or eat chili, and it's this is the 3rd year, so it's a nice event.
A lot of chili, too.
A lot of chili.
A lot of chili. And Lee
Gotta
did
like
win that,
chili.
right? And he was
Yeah, I assembled it. Yes, you won.
behind every good meal there's one. It was spicy, if I remember correctly.
It is.
Well, I would like to thank everyone for coming as well. Thank council for working. And as I always say, I'm really excited and enjoying working with everybody. And I just so excited about seeing people from the community. And just encourage you to bring and have more people come. This is our town, all inclusive. So thank everybody for being here.
Jim?
Yes, I'd also like to thank everybody who took the time to come out tonight and participate in the process. We do appreciate your input. I think that's enough, Your Honor.
That's it? I echo everyone else's. Thank you for being here. I definitely want you to make sure that you understand that we make a lot of decisions when we sit here, and I'm very careful when it comes to tax dollars and being accountable for the tax dollars. So I do appreciate everybody putting their input in, and I always like to say this, I like to represent everybody in the city of Meadville. It's been my hometown, it's the same as it has been yours. Know a lot of people. Politics stays outside. We're here to represent everybody, so I think that's important to remember. So with that, I will call for motion to what?
Executive session for real estate
Got
and
another one coming?
personnel.
What's that?
And personnel.
Personnel.
I also move.
Second?
Second.
Roll call.
Donahue?
Aye.
McKnight?
Aye.
Roa?
Aye.
Vogel?
Aye.
Stearns?
Aye. We're adjourned.